Hey, Greg. Thanks, Greg. All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Great. It is great to be with all of you here today at Connect Day 2. Yesterday was a great day. I had a chance to talk with many of you about the innovations that you're building, the things that you're building in your organizations, how you're leveraging APIs, how you're leveraging integrations, and how you're bringing all of that together. I hope you had a great day learning from the different sessions as well as from each other. I know that I always learn a lot from talking to our customers, and I think that Sovan had a great line yesterday, Sovan from Amtrak, when he said that there are no legacy systems, there's only legacy mindsets. I thought that was great. So this is a roadmap presentation, so anything I say can change. Our lawyers love their small fonts. Sorry. All right. Speaking of change then, let's think about the fourth industrial revolution. Ross talked about this a bit yesterday. Greg did as well. And actually, we all started talking about the fourth industrial revolution together here at Connect 2016. And in the intervening 2 years, the pace of change has not only continued, it has really actually accelerated. And as we think about that and we think about how we can adapt and adopt all of those changes and how we can help you and your organizations adapt those better, we start to think about this concept of mindset, right? And as I was reflecting on that, I thought about something that happened with my 7-year-old daughter. So my daughter plays the piano, and she plays softball. And each time she goes up to the piano to practice, she inevitably ends up crying. It's kind of sad. So I said to her, well, you know, if you don't like playing piano, we can go do something else. And she said, no, I love playing piano, but I can't get it right the first time. And I realized that the reason she was crying was because she was frustrated and she was expecting herself to sit down and immediately start playing. And I said, well, look, when you play softball, you love swinging the bat. You swing the bat, you miss the ball, you keep swinging, and at some point you hit that ball and it feels great. And when you practice piano, it's the same thing. You're practicing, you're supposed to make mistakes, but the more you practice, the fewer mistakes you make. And the next time she went to play that piano, she sat down and she played the piece through all the way end to end perfectly. It was amazing. Now, if you think about that, nothing changed in her skill from the time that I talked to her and the time she played again. What actually changed, though, was her mindset, how she was thinking about the activity, how she was approaching that activity. And we see that same change in adults and also in organizations, how that change in mindset can fundamentally change the outcome and the results. This concept of a growth mindset, that talent is not innate, that it can be learned, that it can be grown, and that it can be developed. And as we take a look at these graphs on the outer edges, there's this concept that technology, the rate of change of technology is accelerating, while the rate of change of human adaptability is somewhat flatter, right? And the question that we ask ourselves is, how can we apply a growth mindset to the rate of technology change? And I think what's very interesting is that many of you here are already doing that. We've heard so many stories of people using APIs as well as composite services to create application networks. This thing that you actually get when you build with API-led connectivity. It's not just a concept. It's a physical thing that you get. And by having that, you have the ability then to plug in additional technology capabilities as and when they become available. It accelerates your development over time. And more than that architectural structure that you get, there's also the concept of an application network mindset. One that takes all of that technology that's becoming made available and structures it and allows us to think about it more effectively. And again, bring that into our products and how we build. It's different than the original, the old mindset when we were in IT and we built every project as fast as we could because we had to get it out there, right? Now we think about each project, and we start to think about, and we see many of you starting to think about how you can spend that little bit of extra time in your projects to leave behind reusable assets. to enable a composable enterprise and to really allow your teams, your organizations, to harness the breadth of capabilities that are out there, so that the only thing really holding you back becomes your imagination and your creativity. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that application network. The network is created by these two key constructs of an API at the top, a contract, the definition of the business objects and of the systems in your enterprise environment, and then that composite service or integration down at the bottom that defines how data is moved, how it's transformed, how it's brought together, and fundamentally how business process is created inside of your enterprise. The Anypoint Platform is uniquely positioned and created to help you work with both those APIs as well as those composite services. Across the top here, we have our control plane, which is composed of our design center, which has all of the design time and development time tools to help you design those APIs, define them, as well as implement the underlying composite service. In the center, we have Anypoint Exchange, our collaboration environment, enabling you and everybody in your organization to understand what's available, what components are out there, and being able to discover them at the point of need, at the point of design. And then we have Management Center, which contains our API manager as well as our runtime manager, helping you and your teams to deploy those runtimes, deploy those integrations, manage them, and also apply security policies and other types of policies on top of your API endpoints. And then across the bottom, we have our Mule runtime, as well as our runtime services, our runtime plane. And this is where the gateways and the actual integrations occur. This is where payloads run, and this is where the Mule runtime actually exists. So our team's been hard at work, and 2017 was a really big year for us. The team's been hard at work driving innovation out to drive capabilities out for you and your organizations. There were over 200 releases in 2017, delivering over 1,500 product improvements. We collaborated with close to 200 customers on customer enhancements, and there were 16 major upgrades. Some of the areas that we delivered in this past year were Exchange 2.0, a completely reimagined collaboration environment, bringing together your API specifications, API portals, along with connectors and templates and examples from MuleSoft, enabling your developers to have a faster start in their development and design. Also enabling you to create reusable assets to be stored in Exchange for future use. Then there was Flow Designer, our web-based rapid integration environment, which enabled another set of developers in your organization to come in and start to participate in the creation of your application networks, truly allowing you to harness the power of greater participation. And then finally, in the fall, there were elements like our visual API designer that was released, a structured view on RESTful APIs, allowing your developers to work with APIs at a conceptual view rather than at a specification level. Again, allowing less technical users to be a part of the design and creation of your application networks, while also enabling your more technical users a faster onboard and on-ramp into that specification language. So truly an amazing year, and I want to thank all of our customers and our partners for being with us on this journey and for really propelling us in this last year. Thank you. I also want to thank the product team that's been hard at work building all of this, and they're now hard at work building what's coming up in 2018. Let's take a look at that. As we look at our roadmap for 2018, we continue to drive forward on these aspects in the Anypoint Platform of helping you and your teams to accelerate your innovation velocity, ensuring that as you build APIs and as you build those composite services, that everything you build is secure by design. And then finally, focusing on your operations and your DevOps teams, enabling them, shut off our phones, enabling them to operate at greater scale across the entire application network. Now let's dig into each of these areas. Let's take a look at innovation velocity. As we said, technology is accelerating in front of us, the pace of change is increasing, and what we really think about is how we can build better tools and better capabilities to allow you and your developers to design and release those APIs as well as the composite services. And it's not just about what you build, but how you build it and how we're able to help you accelerate that. So as we take a look at that, we think about innovation velocity along these core pillars. First, having a unified and visual tool set. Unified in that it contains both the API as well as a composite service, allowing you to design and define together and collaborate across those. Simplified and full lifecycle, so that as we add more and more capabilities and features into the Anypoint platform, we continue to refine that set of capabilities. So it continues to be easy to learn and easier to onboard and ramp. And then finally, driving engagement throughout the entire process so that it's easy to reuse, so that it's the natural step for each developer to take as they're building in this environment. All underpinned by rapid onboarding and continuous learning throughout the entire environment. So let's take a look at one of the first areas, Mule4 and Studio. This was released earlier last quarter. Mule4 is the next generation of our core runtime engine. We've enabled a level of simplicity in Mule4 by taking all the language constructs and compacting them by over 50%, allowing the full expressiveness of the Mule language, but while having significantly fewer concepts for your developers to have to understand and learn. We've also simplified things like error handling, as well as management of streams. All of this to allow your developers to build that much more rapidly. As well, there were performance improvements. The auto-tuning of the engine allows for your developers to not have to worry about thread allocation and specification in their design. And then finally, extensibility. The Mule4 architecture has a more extensible infrastructure and an API layer that allows for two things. One is it allows for easier upgrades of the Mule runtime, but then critically, it also allows for new capabilities to be developed over time. Some of them I'll show you now are things that MuleSoft is developing, and we'll also be opening up this extensibility layer to all of our customers and our partners to build on top of that core Mule runtime engine. So with that, I'd like to introduce and welcome Andrew Bragdon on the stage. Andrew is one of the product managers here at MuleSoft. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, so we talked about the extensibility capabilities of Mule4. One of the first areas I want to take a look at in terms of that extensibility is a new concept called triggers. Now, as we take a look at this top flow, this is what a connection to Salesforce would have looked like in the past, something that kicks off a poll, checks for a change in a table, and then brings back that information. That is all now compressed into a single step in your flow called a trigger, bringing it all together into a single step. This also enables a more functional view on that flow. So what you don't see here, but what you'll see in the demo, is that you no longer have to create the query. You can simply point to either the table or the record or the business object that you want to pull back information from, and the rest is taken care of for you. So as you watch this demo, check for where those functional areas are really enabled in those triggers. Andrew?
So in this demo, what we want to do is we want to sync an on-premise database into Dynamics 365 in the cloud. So we come into the new Flow Designer experience, and we're greeted with the Get Started wizard. So when we come in here, we can go ahead and choose where we want to come from. In this case, a database. This is going to automatically set up our trigger whenever there's a change in the database. Now from here, I want to go into Dynamics 365. So I'm just going to choose that. And then from here, I want to choose the operation, in this case, create, because I want to create a new record every time there's a change in the database. So I go ahead and hit Done, and now my flow has been set up. All I have to do is fill in the blanks. So first, I head over to the database connector, and I set that up. It's already connected, so I put in the table name, in this case, user. Now I go over to Dynamics 365 and set that up too. I just need to pick what operation I want to create. So in this case, I want to create a contact. I go ahead and pick that, and now the system is ready for me to figure out the mapping. How do we map the data from the database schema into the Dynamics 365 environment? So if we tap on this transform connector, you can see here that DataSense is going to pull in the Office 365 schema. Now, if we actually scroll up and down this list of fields, you can see it's huge. this is potentially a pretty daunting task to actually figure out how to actually map all my data in my local database into the Office 365 environment.
So to help you developers with that, I am really happy to announce the introduction of machine learning to the Anypoint platform with our data weave-based auto mapping. Thank you. This is going to take all the information from inside of DataSense, the rest of the flow, as well as the rest of the metadata inside of the application network to help accelerate and recommend the correct mappings. Andrew?
So let's see how that works. You can see up here at the top, we've got this blue preview button that is telling me that I actually have a suggestion available. So if I go ahead and actually click on preview, you can see it's going to show me a full and complete mapping going from all the different input fields that I have into Dynamics 365. And you can see that it's mapping all the fields in a fully automatic fashion using machine learning. And it's even getting some of the tricky ones. For example, telephone going to mobile phone, or contact ID going to user ID. These are difficult, non-trivial mappings, have all been identified for me automatically. So now all I have to do is go ahead and hit apply, and that will actually accept this mapping, and I'm done. I have now completed my first integration between database running on-premise and Dynamics 365 in the cloud.
That's great. Now, it's a great integration. We love that. Now, as we think about how else we are accelerating your developers and your developers' capabilities, we're bringing together all these aspects of additional landing pages and walkthroughs, as well as quick start guides for those first-time developers or those developers who are being introduced to a new capability inside of the platform. As well, we are releasing a unified help center, bringing together content from the documentation, our support portals, as well as forums, creating a context-sensitive help that is then surfaced at the point of need inside of the products, enabling your more experienced developers to learn day by day, so that every time they come into the platform and as they have to do new tasks or build new activities, they're able to learn at that point when they need to. Now, another way that we want to enable you to leverage your developers' capabilities is through the use of API specifications, these definition languages. So we continue to build on RAML. At the same time, as a member of the Open API initiative, we are happy to announce today that we will be having native support for the Open API specification inside of our API Designer and all of our API tooling. So whether your developers are used to working with a design time language like RAML or a code-generated language like OpenAPI, you'll be able to use both of those throughout the entire Anypoint platform. Andrew, why don't you show us what that's going to look like?
So here we are in the new API Designer, which has full OpenAPI support. Now I come in here and I'm in my blank canvas. So why don't we go ahead and fill this in? I'm going to paste in a real OpenAPI specification right into API Designer. And you can see that as soon as I do that, it's parsed and understood by the system. And you can see the API summary updates on the right with the system's understanding of that API. Let's actually drill into that. So if I come over here to the API summary on the right, I can actually drill into some of the different resources and methods that are available here. For example, in this one, I can see all of the details of this API visually. And you can see that all the different nuances, and there are many, of OpenAPI are fully understood and natively supported. Another exciting thing about our OpenAPI support is how we implemented it. Under the covers, rather than connecting directly to the syntax structure, instead, we are storing and connecting to the meaning of the underlying API specification. So you can see here, I can seamlessly flip back and forth between OpenAPI and RAML because that abstraction layer underneath is handling all of the unique complexity. And so as a result, we're able to offer fully native support between OpenAPI and RAML. And perhaps most importantly, they are now both treated in a fully equal way by the platform. Let's show a quick example of this. If we head over into the mocking service, we can actually try out this API before it's even been implemented. So here we go into the vehicle detail API, and we're going to go ahead and populate the vehicle make. Let's try BMW and submit that. There you have it. You can see a real example coming straight out of the mocking service, right out of the OpenAPI spec definition.
The ability to work natively with multiple specifications and really, truly future-proof your investment. As we look forward, if there are additional specifications that come out, all of that can be translated into that same underlying metadata layer that we'll use for all of our tooling. Now, we'll continue to innovate on RAML as well as we look forward as a design time language truly focused on reuse as well as strongly typed domain modeling. Now let's turn our attention to the next area of innovation in our roadmap, enabling your APIs and your applications to be secure by design. So not a day goes by without us hearing about some intrusion, some vulnerability, or some data exfiltration out of an enterprise. And if you think about the number of endpoints, the number of cloud services, this is sort of expected because the scope of risk actually continues to increase. And as we've been thinking about an application network and applying that application network mindset to security, we started to think about and ask ourselves how we could work with security and how we can enable your organizations to be more secure in a different way. As we thought about this, the first area is that by having the definition of what your teams want to have happen, we can drive to an intent-driven security where the system or the Anypoint Platform applies all of the right approaches and policies for you because we know and the platform knows what you were trying to do. The second is, as you think about an application network, the ability for different nodes in that network to talk to each other allows for a much more adaptive security layer. And then finally, by applying security across the entire application network through a set of consistent means, you really get a more pervasive security across the entire environment. Now let's start with taking a look at Anypoint Security, a net new offering in our overall portfolio, all enabled on top of our API management and API gateway capabilities. Inside of the Anypoint Security portfolio, we have these core constructs of a tokenization service, enabling you to specify particular fields in your payloads that will be encrypted in transit as they pass through gateways, an edge security layer that allows for perimeter security and truly security in depth and in breadth. And then finally, as we look forward, by having an application network, we start to think about how we can apply threat detection across that network, as well as allowing and enabling more rapid authentication and authorization of machine-to-machine traffic across that entire application network. Now first, let's take a look at the Edge Gateway. And as you take a look at this next demo, what I want you to look for is how the Edge Gateway provides that more adaptive mechanism in security. Andrew?
So in this demo, what we're going to show you is what happens when you secure an API and it comes under attack. So what we've done is we've set up two different instances of the exact same API. But one is secured by the Edge Gateway from Anypoint Security, and the other one is exposed directly to external traffic. Now we want to show you what happens when we send good traffic and malicious traffic into these APIs. So let's start by looking at the secured API. If we drill into that, we can see that there are about 3,000 requests per unit time in this chart. And this coincides with the normal amount of traffic that we expect to see in this API. So what this means is that the good traffic is making it through, but none of that malicious traffic is actually ever making it through the perimeter security into the actual API. Let's try going back and compare how this is faring for the unsecured API. How is it doing? So if we go ahead and drill into the unsecured API, and we scroll down to the same chart we were looking at before, we can see that there are over 100,000 requests per unit time coming in here, almost 30 times as much traffic as you saw before. And you can actually see that most of these are 500s, which is not good, because this means that a lot of that malicious traffic is actually getting through and is actually hitting this API, and is potentially even affecting the state of the underlying system.
Now, you would typically never actually deploy a system in this way, right? You wouldn't actually have an unprotected, unsecured API out there. But the implication here is that by deploying by hand, it can be difficult. You might miss something. You might make mistakes, right? With an application network, you can actually apply that edge security gateway across all the traffic coming in as an ingress layer. Now, the other thing to notice here is that this traffic is spiking. This is at the API gateway layer. Okay? For that security API, what actually happened is that information was being passed from the underlying API gateway up to the edge gateway, okay? Allowing the edge gateway to understand and start tracking as it was letting traffic through what the response was from the underlying systems. And by doing that, starting to adapt actually what traffic it let through and what it considered to be malicious traffic, okay? This truly sort of adaptive layer. Now let's take a look at another area of security. How do we really take a look at increasing security by reducing your scope of risk? We take a look at that with the tokenization service. The tokenization service has the capability to take any field in a payload and encrypt it as it passes through a gateway. And it's actually a format-preserving encryption. So if you pass in a credit card number, what comes out the other side looks like a credit card number, but it can't actually be used if somebody gets a hold of that value. So what JetBlue did was they took their entire e-commerce system, which was originally under PCI compliance, meaning it was at risk for exfiltration of credit card numbers, and they installed that edge gateway at the point of the consumer entering that credit card information. And then they installed another edge gateway on the way from their systems out to their payment provider. So what happened is, as the credit card information came in from the consumer, it was converted into a token, and now their entire e-commerce system was taken out of the scope of PCI compliance. That value was stored in all the existing systems. Nothing had to be changed because it was format preserving, so anything that was expecting a 16-digit number can continue to use that. And then that value at the point of payment processing was passed to the payment provider, and as it transited that gateway, it was then converted back into the original credit card number, and then that was passed through for processing. So in that way, they limited their exposure with credit card numbers to just those 2 points in that overall system. And you could do this with all kinds of information, whether it's PII or any other information that you consider to be particularly secure or particularly concerning in your organizations. Now let's take a look at some additional areas of compliance. The Anypoint Platform already complies with all of these different security protocols as well as information security compliance needs. And today I'm happy to announce that as of April 1st, MuleSoft is in process for FedRAMP compliance. Thank you. Now, in addition to any federal customers that we have here in the audience, by complying to the US government regulations for cloud-based, cloud-hosted environments, what this is going to do for all of you is to start to increase the capabilities in authentication, authorization, and auditing. As we build in all the capabilities needed for FedRAMP, all of you will take advantage of that as a part of our multi-tenanted cloud environment as well. The other area here is taking a look at data residency. So just at the end of last year, we released our European data center. So the control plane fully hosted in the EU. Right? In addition to that full data residency in the EU, we will also be complying with GDPR, which is a regulation in the EU that comes out towards the end of this month. Now, finally, I want to take a look at this last area of innovation as we take a look at our roadmap for 2018, the concept of operational excellence. And again, I want to apply that application network mindset to operational excellence and think about how we can help your operators, your DevOps folks, better manage, operate, and understand what is happening in all the different environments all the way up to production. And so we think about this along these three areas. First, having a unified deployment model. So we're able to take, again, unified meaning we take that API specification and the composite service together through all those environments, ensuring that you have consistency from dev to QA to stage all the way out into production. The second area is looking at how we can really help you and your organizations manage all these capabilities and that entire application network across clouds. And then finally, how we can take the information, the knowledge, and the metadata that we have inside of that application network, that your developers and your designers have put into that application network, and take that and apply it to this activity of monitoring and troubleshooting, giving a different layer on top of monitoring and troubleshooting that is at a functional layer. So first, let's take a look at multi-cloud deployments. Many of you have told us that you really appreciate all of the benefits of Cloud Hub. The ease of use, the ability to deploy very rapidly, rolling upgrades, where MuleSoft helps manage all of your applications on your behalf. But you've asked for those Cloud Hub capabilities to be enabled in any environment. And today, I'm happy to introduce Anypoint Runtime Fabric, the ability to containerize your runtimes and run all of it on top of a Kubernetes-based software appliance in the environment of your choice. So in this next demo, what I want you to be watching for is how that complexity is stripped away and how you can really use Cloud Hub and leverage Cloud Hub across many different environments. Andrew?
So here we are in Runtime Manager. So let's go ahead and click into Runtime Fabrics. Here you can see all of the fabrics that have been set up. Now, as Mark mentioned, underneath the covers, we're leveraging Kubernetes. And so Runtime Fabric can actually run anywhere. Now, another top ask from our customers has been to add Microsoft Azure support. So I'm excited today to demo for you Runtime Fabric running seamlessly in Azure. So let's just flip over to the Azure portal. So we head over here, we go to Resource Groups, and I'm going to scroll down here to the resource group that was created by Runtime Fabric. Now, if you look in here, we have a number of different resources and other infrastructure that was all spun up automatically by Anypoint Runtime Fabric to build itself out. Let's actually drill down a little further. If we go into this first virtual machine, for example, we can see it's up and running. But most importantly, it's fully managed by Runtime Fabric and Anypoint Platform. So let's see what that means. If I head back over to Anypoint, what I can do is go ahead and actually deploy my first application right into Anypoint Runtime Fabric. So first, let's go ahead and name this application. I'm going to put a name in here, and then I'm going to choose Azure Runtime Fabric instead of Cloud Hub as my deployment target. Now, I'm going to just choose what application I want to upload. Now, it's important to highlight here that I do not have to modify my application in any way. In fact, this is an existing application that I already deployed into Cloud Hub. Now, when I deploy it through Anypoint Runtime Fabric, it's going to become automatically containerized and then deployed into that fabric for me. Another couple quick things to highlight is I can choose any version I want of Mule, and I can also choose how many replicas. This is how many copies of the same container I want to spin up in the fabric for additional resilience and scale. So now I'm ready to go ahead and hit deploy. I hit deploy, and you can see my container is now, my container fleet rather, is starting to spin up. So let me just open a new tab, and I'm going to go in here to my cloudhub.io address, and when I hit enter, you can see I've loaded up my service. I'm running my very first service right in Anypoint Runtime Fabric running in Azure.
That's great. So we often hear about horizontal scale and scalability and resiliency, but that's always taken care of sort of at this infrastructure layer. What Runtime Fabric provides is a different level of abstraction. So you can float above all that infrastructure, and we can take care of all the functional aspects of rolling upgrades and updating all of your applications for you across clouds. Now, as we think about application networks and we think about operations, there's another aspect of how can we help your operators better understand what is actually deployed and how things look out there? And for that, we have our visualizer. And so in this next demo, what I want you to be watching for is this visualizer that is available now in pilot with a number of design partners. I want you to be watching for how we can help you and your operators understand what's in those environments and also how to align architecture to actual deployment. Andrew?
So here we can go right into Visualizer by navigating through Management Center. And here it's just loaded up. Now let me walk you through what we're seeing here. On the left-hand side, you can see our Experience APIs, Process APIs, and System APIs. And Visualizer is automatically pulling all the right information from across the application network to create this unified view. In this case, of our production environment, you can see is selected at the bottom. Let me also show you a little more. If I click around on some of these different APIs, you can see it will highlight who is calling into that API and who is that API calling out to. Our customers have been using this in our early pilot testing to do a number of things. One thing that has particularly resonated has been to check for misalignment between the intended design and what was actually implemented in production. This has been found to be very useful. In fact, once we drill in, we can even inspect an item to get a lot more detail. We can look at metrics, and we can even drill down right into Runtime Manager. I can also check how my APIs are being used. For example, this API, if I go ahead and collapse process over here on the left, you can see that it's making a number of calls straight past the process layer right into the system layer. And this is actually not intended. This is a deviation from the agreed upon design. So it's great to highlight that, and we can follow up with the team. Now, another thing we can do is we can actually reassign our different applications to different layers. So here I decided, hey, you know what? This layer is this should really be in the process layer. So when I go ahead and reassign it, the diagram will automatically relay out to accommodate my choice.
Thanks, Andrew. So again, a visual representation of your application network, allowing you to work with that at a different layer. And as we look forward, we're using that visualization to also help dig into different aspects of the management plane as well as troubleshooting. Now, speaking of troubleshooting, when we think about taking in all of the system metrics from across a very broad application network, as well as all of the log information, typically what happens in an operations environment is that all of that information is brought in at a very generic layer. And so as we think about this from an application network mindset, what we really started to do is to think about how we could apply all of the functional capabilities on top of that information and how that would actually change and accelerate both understanding as well as troubleshooting if there's ever an issue. So in this next demo, what I want you to be watching for is where we're translating that system information actually into functional capabilities. Andrew?
So in this demo, we've just deployed a new version of our CRM integration into prod, and we want to check on how it's doing. So we log into Anypoint monitoring. Now here you can see we have a 360-degree functional view of the application network. Now in this case, we've started in a customized dashboard that has been built out by the team. And that brings together a single unified view of all the key things from across the application network that are interesting to this team. And in particular, the team has pulled out specific functional metrics that are very difficult to get today. For example, data on how their SAP integration is performing, or how their Dynamics 365 integration is performing, or which messages are getting stuck, and so on. Let me also just show you for a minute just how customizable these dashboards really are. I can change virtually any aspect of the charts and metrics in here. For example, I can say, hey, for this chart, I want to repivot that, and I want to segment it around API path. So if I go ahead and do that, you can see it's now immediately grouped by request path. And I can hover over that and head back to the main dashboard.
OK, let's pause there for a moment. Now, what you're seeing here is Andrew actually split that data set that was coming back from the Dynamics 365 connector to the different request paths. Those request paths are actually the actions that are being taken, are defined by the integration designer against Dynamics. So it's against specific actions, not just generic metric information coming back. And what you're seeing across all of these graphs is information about the actual business process defined as the business process and those actions. So if your operators ever need to go back and talk to their designers about what's happening or the developers, they can talk the same language rather than trying to translate from generic information back into what was actually designed and developed. The last interesting point here is that Dynamics 365 connector, in addition to telling you about the integration, it's actually telling you about that external system. So in some sense, you're getting monitoring and management on an external third-party cloud solution, enabling you to understand how it's performing on your behalf. All right, Andrew, let's keep digging down on this one.
All right, so as we scan across this dashboard, we can see that there are a number of errors on this particular part of the application network. So why don't we zoom in? We can click and drag, and as soon as we do that, all the charts update simultaneously to show the new time range. Now, it does look atypical. This service normally has 0 errors. So let's drill down. When we drill down, we are taken to the top failures view. So we're now looking at a smaller portion of the application network and a more granular view. Now, if we scroll down, we can actually zoom in here and get just a little bit closer. And we do, again, confirm it looks like there are plenty of errors going on, and this is unanticipated. So what we can actually do is we can actually come down and we can look at how many 500s are happening. We see there's over 1,500 of them. So let's drill down again. Now we're going to take advantage of another brand new feature in Anypoint Monitoring called distributed log search. This is searching that portion of the application network, and we can go ahead and pop in error, as you see I just entered there. And you can see this chart is showing us that there is indeed an increase in errors from 0 up to where it is right now. So this is definitely concerning. Now, if we scroll down on the left-hand side, you can see that the summary view is showing facets summarizing all the data, and we can see right away that there does seem to be a number of errors coming from this exception handling strategy. So we go ahead and apply that filter, and you can see it appears up here at the top, and now all my search results have been repivoted around that set of errors and the unique functional understanding of these connectors. Now, if I go ahead and expand the first item in the results, we can see that there's actually an unhandled exception right here. We have the full stack trace, as well as all the other specific functional information we need to debug the problem. This is it. We found it. So we can go ahead and fix this issue and then later verify it by going back to those real-time dashboards I showed earlier. So it was easy to fix this issue with Anypoint Monitoring and having a fully integrated solution.
Thanks, Andrew. So what he's done here is he's gone from the breadth of the application network and filter down across all those nodes actually to one single node, and then pulled out a single log record out of one node to debug this solution. Able to traverse that rapidly. So with that, in summary, as we take a look at the Anypoint platform, we are driving to a application network mindset as we think about how to accelerate your team's innovations, how to help your teams be more secure as they're building, and how to drive operational excellence. So I am delighted to announce today the release. As a part of this release, the Mule4 runtime engine is available today. As part of the Titan release, our tokenization service as well as the Edge Gateway is available today. As well, what you just saw in Anypoint Monitoring is GA as of today. And finally, Anypoint Runtime Fabric is available today to design partners, available generally later on this quarter. The Titan release really focused on making you, your developers, and your operators Titans. So the question I would ask you to think about as we leave here is this. As your development cycles and as your innovation cycles start to accelerate, and as your enterprise environments become more secure day by day, and as your operations teams become more efficient and effective in managing at cloud scale, what can you imagine building and creating with an application network? Thank you very much.